Oh, my shock is out.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Howdy folks, my name is Mac. Welcome to my channel, Trash and Trail. I have ripped the shocks off of this Jeep 3 times now. It is not a failure of the shocks. It is mostly a failure of me. I have failed to measure. I failed to properly install. And I finally got sick and tired of the shocks being in the factory location and decided to do an outboard because I figured if I was going to go through all the work and effort of making stock shocks fit, well, might as well go nuclear. So here is my journey of installing these Fox 2.0 shocks in what they call an outboard fashion, which is Frenching in this bracket and setting everything up. That includes moving the spring perches and doing a bunch of other modifications and fixes, including fixing my upper control arm bracket and a few other modifications. So join me for a journey as we take this Jeep and turn it into this. Thank you for watching. We're making progress on getting these spring perches off. I ground through here and here, and similarly over here, used a chisel. You can see some of the chisel marks and sort of chiseled it down. At the same time I was grinding this, I was also using this tiny little carbide burr and working my way on grinding out that weld right there and the weld over there on that side too. This one is largely out, but it looks like it needs to be a little deeper up there to get all the way. So I'm going to do a little bit more, and I think the spring perch is going to come right out. There's one more weld at the top, and you can't quite get to it because of the body mount. I tried wiggling and jiggling on it. Maybe it'll fail. But what I really need to do is kind of slice right across here, and there's not a lot of space to do that. All right, I've been getting up by there with the die grinder. That seemed to be my only option. It's that or remove the body bolts and pull the body up. And just in case you haven't seen other disturbing news, the control arm, upper control arm body mount is just about ripped its way completely off of the frame. So more stuff to fix along the way. I think we might have some clearance now. What I essentially did was lifted the body up by 2 or 3 inches by doing some really sketchy stuff with the lift. And I loosened up or removed all of the body bolts in order to achieve that. All right, that got me just enough space up there to grind that top bit just a little bit. And now I need to get over here to that side and grind that one. It's easy to hold the camera there. A lot different to get a person over there. And that is the limit of what you can do with the parking brake cable, by the way. But maybe a little bit past what you can do. And there she goes. And this is essentially going to get relocated somewhere in here. It's going to line up with that top bolt right there. And that bolt's going to go right over there once we get this thing all figured out. Now onto this side, and I think this side's going to be a lot easier with all the clearance that we've made ourselves. All right, well, attempts were made at cutting that spring perch and that spring perch. We'll see if that's good enough. I'm going to start on the easy to access side. And I did a much better job of cutting this one. I cut about 1/8 of an inch away from the welds, and that is the secret. That made it just come right off, and I can grind the weld off, and a little bit less spring perch isn't going to hurt anything. It's amazing how much dirt is in all that. Here, that one is off, but this one is still stuck. Needs a little bit more grinding. All right, that one is off too. It definitely makes a lot of a difference just getting your vehicle a little bit up off the motor mounts. It's also crazy how much sand ends up inside there. He just gets trapped. Got that all grounded smooth on all the sides. Got the body back down on the frame. And that's probably where I'm going to leave it for a couple of days until I get the shocks in. Because what we're going to do with the shocks, use this piece of 3/4 inch 195 wall square tube and some rod ends, which are effectively the same thing as these little guys, to make something that looks just like that. That's my sway lock, only we're going to make two of them. One is going to be the length of the shock at ride height. So we're going to determine, once we get these spring buckets back in, because that's going to affect ride height, we're going to put those back in, tack them into place, get an idea of where ride height is. We're going to know if it's different, because I wrote down where it was on the bottom of these little shackle mounts. We're going to figure out, I'm guessing we're going to get another inch of lift, putting the springs in a different spot, but we're going to find out. Once we know where ride height is, then we'll use that to create our rod ends at ride height. And I believe it's not full compression, full extension, one of those. I have to look it up. That's it for today. A lot of grinding, a lot of progress. Don't let me forget to turn off the light underneath the Jeep, and we'll be back at this tomorrow or in a couple days when we get parts. Shocks should be here on Tuesday, and bump stops sometime around then. And I think the rod ends are in the mailbox. Got to go walk up to the mailbox and get them. All right, there's the cheap ass rod ends. I should be able to just put a little squirt or two of weld on that nut, and I might not even ruin the nut, but that's basically going to help me approximate. Bump stops also arrived. So nice box here from Rock Chalk. There's the item number if you need it. But yeah, that will help me locate exactly where to put these things. On this, use the Sawzall to cut underneath there. Scored it out with the grinder with a thin cut. Now I'm just using the flap disc, and you can kind of start seeing where the tears are right there. And I think if I give that a good whack with the chisel, it might start lifting. A couple whacks with the chisel, and you can see it starting to enlarge. I think I'm gonna do the same thing over there just to encourage it. Making progress. It's starting to tear, starting to come off. I just got to get the other side encouraged to do the same thing. We have lift off, but we're still got a little contact up there, so I'm going to grab the grinder and do a little bit more grinding just to give it a little bit more encouragement. Getting off there nice and clean though. Ta-da! Nice and clean. Still perfectly weldable backable on, although I think we're only going to be using the lower portion. There's the old bump stop. That kept coming out. It's been tumbled well. And we have ourselves a 7/16 drill bit, a 1/2-13 tap, and all the stuff for the Currie bump stops. This goes on the bottom, and luckily it needs to be drilled out for a larger bolt, which is good because that no longer fits, and that hole is wallered out. So we are going to grab the drill, we're going to grab the tap, and then we'll put the drill, drop that all in there, and bump stops. When we're going to use the bump stop to locate the upper one. That is one installed. Do remind me next time I do that side to use the dullest 7/16 drill bit that I possibly have. Oh wait, I made it even duller on this side. Now it's really dull. Moving on to the upper bump stop, which is on the spring perch that's removed. Here's the part that I don't like. So the lower went from 3/4 to 1/2 inch. No big deal. I carry 3/4. I carry a 1/2 inch head. This is a 5/16 inch Allen. So I am, as soon as I get off the camera here, going to make a note of that on my tool file, because now I have another socket that I have to add to my field repair kit. And I do not like yet another fastener on these guys. Well, look what just arrived today. We have our shocks. Well, it is going to be time to really get busy on this. Another day, I have the jack stands off. I've been slowly lowering the jack. And we might actually be stuck now with the jack. It may not go any lower. But what I've discovered is that the bump stops. We may have some other clearancing issues that we're going to have to do here. I think at a minimum, this wing here has to get cut off because lineup wise, that's got to go right in there some ways. And of course you can't see it with the exhaust, but that is hitting right there. And it's doing the same thing on the other side. So that's got to get a little choppy to make that work. Well, that's a funny issue to have. The extension on the jack won't allow the jack to go low enough to get the Jeep to go low enough to cycle everything back there. So I'm gonna have to prop up another jack to get that jack out from underneath to keep going down. It does look like the exhaust is contacting, or is about to. The only thing that I can see that's gonna make contact is that right there. Of course, that might self-clearance itself. But that probably also could be alleviated if we had a lower profile exhaust hanger. Unfortunately, my 4-ton jack maxes out right there. So I guess we're gonna get a little western here and shove a couple blocks of wood underneath it and hope that's stable enough. We got clearance. Should be able to roll that out. And now we're going to slowly, so slowly let this down. Okay, we're finally at a point where we're making enough contact with the bump stop that I can hold itself up. Previously, this just was loose enough that it wouldn't stick up there. So, interestingly enough, we still haven't made contact there. And we got to get that one over there. For it, you can obviously see it's making that side go down faster than the other side. That's the reason why we're not having that exhaust problem. Because this side isn't going down commensurate with the other, obviously because the jack is off center. All right, well, exhaust pliers are not working well at getting that off. So I might just unbolt the hanger from the side of the frame. It's obvious this hanger is going to need to be replaced. But if I can get this exhaust up about another ½ inch to an inch, I think we'll have clearance. Back out working on the Jeep. I'm a little stuck here. I want to lower the Jeep down more, but the spring perch won't stay in place. And I was kind of hoping to lower the Jeep onto the perch and it would sort of find its own magic place. But I got the welder out, all ready to weld. What I'm basically going to have to do is tack it and guess the position. I know that doesn't work, grind it off, tack it and guess it again because I can't be under the Jeep holding it while lowering the Jeep onto it. Now moving on to the second most favorite part of the day, where I don't know where I put my flap disc grinder, and I'm probably going to start cleaning the shop until I find it. And there goes another 2 hours. Aha! Quick find. That wasn't too bad. After a lot of struggling, I managed to get a nice little tack right there. I had to wiggle and jiggle and wiggle my way all the way back here with my mask on, and got up here to start tacking, and then the gun didn't go, and I had to climb out, fix the welder, and climb all the way back in. And now I'm going to climb around to the other side and see if I got anything aligned correctly with the hole. Alright, so the spring perch looks like it's in a good spot bump stop wise. And we are making just a tiny little bit of contact on the exhaust right there. But we also have a little bit of room to wiggle that up a little bit more. So I feel pretty comfortable with that being where that is. The question is can I get it to stay there when I jack everything up? Moving over to this side, I feel a lot better about where it is, but I do think it needs to come forward. To match the other side. So I think now that I got a good idea where the other one is, I'm going to use that as a reference and see if I can get these good and tacked in here. Once I feel like they're strong, I'm going to put the springs back, and then I'm going to measure ride height. All right, the good news is my tack held. You can see that circle right there is lining up fairly well with that. I'm probably maybe a little bit farther back, perhaps, but I do feel good about this location. I just hope it does not interfere with our spring or our shock mount. And you can see how I have some room right here for the exhaust, if I can get this exhaust hanger up. My other option too is to get rid of this body mount, chop this frame, stagger it up an inch, which I wanted to do anyways, and well, maybe now's the time. But that would also help with this exhaust hanger. I am going to figure out where everything is on this side, put a few more tacks on this, and see if I can't get that duplicated on the other. And that needs to come up a little. So I ground off my tacks, moved this around a little bit, made some reference marks. I'm gonna get because I don't think that line is exactly square to down, but it is square to sort of the frame. So I'm gonna aim for the front of that, but this ended up about 1/8 of an inch off. So I need to grind all these tacks off and do it again, because it's really hard to hold this up, sit here, squirt that on there, and get it all aligned. All right, so this spring perch sits in just about the way I want. It's tight in the front, it's tight in the back, everything works good. We can slide it everywhere we want. Perfect. Spring perch is all bent up back here, probably from how I removed it. This is right here is so tight, it won't let this sit up, so it rides about here. This is bent over, which is going to make it a pain, if not impossible, to weld. So I think the best thing to do is get out the acetylene torch and heat that up a little bit so that I can rearrange it, because I've tried beating around on it with just the hammer on my anvil, and I can rearrange everything but what I want to rearrange, because there's just no good way to get it someplace. So it's a good time for heat. All right, after I got it heated up, I bashed it in here to use the frame to just sort of shoehorn it in there. But you can see now it's nice and tight there. It's nice and tight there. I feel good about that. Now let's do the same thing to the other side, and then we'll cycle the suspension, see if it's in the right spot. And if it's in the right spot, put the springs in. All right, so I wiped out my line here because, well, the line on the other side was going forward and the line over here was going back. So they meant nothing other than they started at the same point. There's no square point to put a square up on a round frame in order to get it in the right spot. So what I do have is I have this tow hook right here, and from that lip over is 3 3/4, a tick under 3 3/4 on the other side. So I replicated that over here as best as I could. And I mean, axis wise, I don't see how they could differ, because basically the spring perches at the same side. Same way, they're both sitting. Let's cycle this and see if we get anywhere. All right, we should be fully down on the bump stops. No contact with the jack whatsoever. I like the fact that we are making no wheel contact, and the wheels look very centered inside the rims, so that's beautiful. That one's not perfectly centered, but it's not terribly centered. If anything, that one needs to go that direction, but I don't think that's bad. I have a little bit of a problem with. It hits, but it doesn't hit evenly. So how did we get one in that spot and this one in this spot? That is an interesting question. Cross member. Look at that. We got almost 3/4 of an inch on the cross member here. But over here, it's about 3/4 of an inch. Let me measure that. The exhaust is hard up against here, but I should be able to caulk the exhaust a little bit by loosening that and dropping this down a little bit. We are hard on the mount right there, but we also have a lot of space up here. Well, not a lot, but a good deal. So I think we'll caulk this when we get the exhaust set, and then rig up a carrier here somehow. All right, I did a bunch of measuring. I'm not 100% sure why things aren't where they are, but I'm not sure that I am concerned. I'm going to try putting the springs in and see what that looks like. Get the bump stops removed, and I'm slowly dropping the springs, and everything looks like it's just coming down in a perfect spot, so I'm pretty happy about that. Back on the springs, we do seem like we're sitting a little higher, but we also seem to not have the same squat that we had before. The Jeep looks a lot more level, and I think that is fantastic. It means we probably have a lot more up travel too. All good things. So let's grab a tape measure and see. Before we were at 22 3/16, and now one-handed tape measuring. Need a lot more tape measure. All right. Interesting. We're actually down lower. We're at 22. Huh. Weird. And this one is at 22. We're actually level now. That's good, because before we weren't. Before we were at 21 7/8. Okay, well, at least we're level, and level means that it probably did a halfway decent job of putting the spring perches where they're supposed to be. It looks pretty good down here. The springs seem like that one's going towards the driver's side, and that one seems like it's also going towards the driver's side, so I'm not sure we're sitting very even, but that's also because we don't have the track bar in here. So my guess is the axle isn't quite centered as well as it should be right now. And then it's time to get the control arm off and address the elephant in the room, which is this ripped bracket. If we don't get this control arm right where we want it, the shock is based off of this position. So if it's not quite sitting where it's supposed to be, then, well, you know, problem. I tried like hell to get the bolt out, which is right here, but I can't get a wrench in it here. The hole is no longer lined up on the other side, and it's no longer a captive nut. So I need to at least bend this back up somewhat. So it's kind of hard to see, but that section right there is collapsed. So I'm going to heat that up while I've got weight on it and see if I can bend this back into some semblance of place without igniting the fuel line. You know. Just went through and weighed my collection of brake drums because I am going to approximate some weight. So I figure the gas tank and the skid plate is about 150 pounds with a full tank, 19 gallons of gas. Figure I've got about 6 in there. I know it weighs more than 50. It's tilted out the scale. I know that weighs 25. So 25 plus 7, that's 75. Extra gas weighs another 70 pounds or so. Let's go with 150. I weigh about 150 with clothes on, soaking wet. So we're going to add 300 pounds to the Jeep, and we're going to see what it does to ride height. About a me worth of brake drums and brake discs in the front seat. All right, I loaded up the new shock towers, the new shocks, the bump stops, and about 160 pounds worth of stuff. I've got all the tools and all close to a bunch of the camping gear that I normally carry. So let's measure what ride height is and see what about 300 pounds worth of gear did. All right, we got about 20 and 3/16. It was 22 with no weight. So basically we lost about 1 3/4 to all that weight. And that, to me, is a lot. To me, that's a lot of shock travel. I don't want this set at a no weight height and not be in the middle of its bias. Okay. Alrighty, we have new Barnes control mounts, upper control arms. We're going to work on getting that installed and we can get moving on this project. All right, we made a little progress last time trying to heat this up. We are going to now cut it off. I think the first thing I'm going to do is get in here with the Torx and get this brake bracket off and get that securely out of the way. Then we need to start making reference marks as to where everything is. Alright, that's almost a little away. Go away. Plug it in the fuel lines. Something like that. Alright. I think we decided we're going to use this one. Alright, well that was a battle. Now we need to finish grinding and cutting all the rest of that off. We need to unbolt this and prep everything to get back together again while not touching any of the fuel lines. Alright, did a little bit more plasma cutting. I got a little too frisky right here. That's going to have to get fixed. And I've started making myself a couple reference lines so that hopefully I can roughly get this back. I'm now going to use the grinder and spend the next hour getting this all clean, and then probably get the welder in here and clean up some of the mess I made. Right. I grabbed the cutoff wheel and I cleaned up a few things here and got a little bit more material off before I start in with the flap disc, which is going to be next. And you got to be really careful about your fuel lines and your evap line. I got it jammed up back in there with a screwdriver. So far that's working. Alright, everything ground off. You can see where I got a little deep with the grinder. You can see where I got a little deep with the plasma cutter. So I am probably going to do a little quick squirt and a little bit more grinding just to cosmetically fix that. And then move on. Alright, just got done drilling out the hole. Grabbing some brake cleaner and cleaning the part up. And spraying the whole thing down with weld-through primer. Because there are spots on that bracket that I don't think I'm going to be able to reach well with spray paint. And I want that to be good and rust-free. To get the spray paint out, I also hit up both of the backs of the shock towers, because once those get welded in, they're going to be inaccessible and inside the frame. There's Steelite stuff, but there's lots of other weld-through primers. This is one I just happen to have. Keep out of reach of children. Oh, too late. More cutting. We are going to grind about 2.5 inches down on this bracket so that this shock mount can French right up in there when we are ready. Alright, did a little bit of preliminary grinding, didn't want to do too much, but you can see right there I'm making contact, so it looks like I need another 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch right out of that corner. Alright, that looks like it's well positioned right there. I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but we are ready for it. And I'm thinking I might need to grind a little bit of this off, but we're going to wait on that. Alright, I happen to have a laser, and they have made a mark under the bumper. And I know that that hole right there in the center is dead center. I confirmed it by measuring. Well, it doesn't quite line up with the brake, but I know a lot of the stuff in the cab is not quite where it's supposed to be. But that should be about the center line of the axle. So the axle is about 1 inch this way. You can also tell that because of the springs and the way that they're leaned over. We get that axle in the right spot, we'll be in good shape. All right, I have jack stands set at exactly right height. Gone through at the tape measure and verified that. And while we're here, I figured I might as well use the laser just to see if the axle's straight. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. I'm not sure I have it level to the ground, but I'd say the axle's straight. I'm just getting these off of the springs and setting this on a stand. But I only have one tack here, and this tack broke, and these were sitting proud of the frame. So I hit it with my hammer until it went where I want it to go. I'm going to grind that tack weld off, and I'm going to put a couple more spot welds in there just because I don't want this to move after it comes out, after the spring, which is probably what's holding it in there, comes out. All right, springs out. Jack stand in place, and we're going to now lower the jack onto those and see if we can get that shackle to 20 3/16. And then we will effectively have floated the rear end, no spring, no tires, everything where it should be for ride height. Extension, this jack does not go low enough, so we're gonna use this to go the last little bit down. Hopefully we can go up. Yep, that's out. And now we're going to slowly go down onto the jack stands. Okay, what are we at? We are at 19 1/4. We need to go up almost 1 inch. So that should be a couple pieces of OSB, which would give me 1 inch. All right, 2 sheets of OSB. We are looking for 20 3/16. And we're at 20 1/2. Yeah, that's close, but I think we need to take out 1 sheet of OSB and replace it with a piece of 3. And we are at 20 1/2. Interesting. Let's see what the other side's at. That is 20 1/4. And many attempts later with various materials, and I feel like we are at 20 5/16, which is not bad. Messed around for a while, and then finally I went and got these that I actually rescued out of an RV the other day that we were scrapping, and we are exactly where we should be, 20 3/16 on both sides. And we're almost level. I'm not 100% sure that this bumper is level to the body either, so there's that. And yeah, there you go. The body is level, but the bumper is not. But hey, I'm not sure that anything's straight left on this frame. Hard to tell what exactly is straight and isn't straight on this frame, so we're gonna go with what we got. All right, several reasons tell me why I've got this new bracket in the right spot. One, the angle on this control arm is the same on the other side. 2, the lines that I made, not that one because this bracket's different, but that one line up. The instructions from Barnes say 3 1/4 inches to there. That's the only reference they give me, so that's right. The angle of this piece of metal is the same as the other bracket. I think I'm going to squirt this one in and call it good. There's another important clue. That bolt is lined up perfectly in that hole. I mean, absolutely perfectly. All burned in. Chasing porosity on that weld. And didn't do terrible on the others, but not 100%. Happy with them. They did what they did. That one I had to ground out twice because I forgot to turn the gas on the welder, and that was my mistake. Spent an extraordinarily way too much time getting this axle dead centered. None of the nuts and bolts on the axle are in the center, so you really have to measure off the brakes, and hopefully they're in the center because that is dead perfect now. Probably took me the better part of 2 hours because I kept shoving it one way and the other way, thinking I was measuring off of something that was in the center, and it's over 100 degrees in the shop right now. I can't think straight, so it's just too hot to think. I'm going to go in for an hour and cool down. I have some concerns. Most notably, when you do 90 degrees off of my short arm, control arm to here, that basically puts the shock almost vertically. And if that shock were at that angle, sucked in, it is dangerously close to the spring pocket. And I'm not so sure that that's right. It also would mean that that little hump right there to the left of where you should probably put the spring pocket would need to get cut out and patched in, which would not be good. So I am consulting with the elders on the forums to see what they have to say. Got that ground up and got that tacked on. It's a very preliminary angle. I am basically using tacks in lieu of another set of hands to hold it there to figure out whether or not my angle is right. Alright, so that line right there is the ideal 90-degree angle, and I believe this is going to be the angle that we're going to get to, because as you can see, it's centered inside that cavity and centered on that body right there. We're going to look at that and see what it gets us. And I believe that's about where we want the shock to be. Again, using the mock-up bars to go from there all the way up to there. And I think that'll French in pretty well. We do have a little bit of contact right there. I need to deal with that. The frame. This is a big moment. I'm a little leery that this is that the whole Jeep is sitting essentially on this, and we're cutting that section off. I might put a jack or something underneath there. Ground through the easy parts of the frame. And then I use the plasma cutter to get through the back. Somewhere around here I've got a hammer. And give that a whack or two. See if we can't get that to come free. Alright, a lot of grinding. That's sort of a preliminary. This isn't quite in the right spot. That needs to be right in the middle. But that's looking pretty snazzy. I need to do more grinding, as usual, back there in the corner. My gaps aren't perfect. I'm not terribly worried about that. I can fill that in with weld. This bottom's going to have to get cut. But that's looking pretty good. Okay, a lot of grinding later, and I mean a lot. I've got this down to about what I think I want it to be. I have marked the shock tower where I want to cut it, and that's what I'm going to do. So the plasma cutter is not working well, and I checked the desiccant, and well, it is bright pink, and it should be that color. That is a 4-ounce pack. I don't have 3 hands. I have put the container of desiccant in the vise. I'm going to pour this in, reinstall everything, and recharge the air compressor and see if that gets the plasma cutter to stop spluttering. Alright, I fixed the plasma cutter. Probably didn't do myself any favors cutting that on the concrete. What it basically was I changed the tip out, but I did not change the swirl tip, and that is clogged, and the tip was clogged. So changing the consumables on that definitely helped. Definitely changing, upping the air compressor pressure a little bit probably helped a little bit too. But I was able to get that lopped off. And now it is about ½ inch or so below the frame for good welding. I'm going to burn that in. Alright, I like that. And I'll let the camera run. Alright, got that one solidly tacked into place. And now the hard part. Making the other side exactly the same as this side. Because it's one thing to just sort of wing and ding it on your way to one side, but now the real work starts in making it exactly the same. Easy way to start is with a shock mount. I've got to get that on the other side. And you can see I got that zeroed out. So that gives me a fairly good idea of what I've got to do over there. So I've got just a little bit of a gap right there. I got a good strong tack in there, not a great one. I think I have the spacing about right. I believe, about, well, I was at 1. It really depends on where you hold this thing. There's not a good spot there. Looks like I'm within about 2 or 3 degrees of where I need to be, which is significant at the end of 24 inches, but a second ago that was 1 degree. Wondering if all of my edges are, yeah, I keep working on this. I think 1 or 2 degrees isn't too bad. I might live with that. All right, so that's within about 1 degree, or 1/10 of a degree. That's definitely tucked up in there. Measure some more things and see if that marking's right. I got it marked out with a paint pen. Another method, I like this method better. I just line that hole up and bingo bongo. Oh, we're pretty close. We're gonna do a little bit more rotation, but I think we're gonna use this method. All right, got this plasmud in the back. It should be just that easy. And to continue that thought, we have a lot of grinding to do. A lot. Well, the good news is I got this one cut out, and I got it cut out really well. Bad news is I got a lot of gap to fill in on welding, but it is a weldable gap. I can step over it. We are tight, tight, tight up there. Really tight. 1/10 of a degree. I can handle that. That's not bad at all. I will live with that difference. I made a really bad mistake and put some really big fat tacks on this, and I forgot to cut the bottom out. Luckily I can reach in there with the plasma cutter. It's just not going to be as nice of a cut as I want it to be, but I probably can clean that up with a grinder, and it'll be what it'll be. An absolutely atrocious cut, but I can probably clean that up with a grinder, and you'll never notice. Alright, that looks socially acceptable. Good morning, it's another day. We have our track bar right here. So, we need to cycle the suspension. In order to cycle the suspension needs to stay, the axle needs to stay centered. track bar is what keeps the axle centered inside the Jeep. So we can't really accurately cycle the suspension until this is in the right spot. Problem is at least according to the videos I've watched and some of the ground truthing I've done underneath the Jeep, this is about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch long. So I'm going to eyeball about 1/2 inch, chop that off, put the joint back in here. What I have to basically do is there's a bracket here on this end, and that's got to get welded up underneath the Jeep someplace. This has to be in exactly the Goldilocks spot because you have the differential on one end and you have the gas tank in the other. So this bar basically has to thread through the Grand Canyon of those two items and not crash into anything. It's tricky. All right, not iPro, but there are my cheaters, so I can at least see. And let's get some ear pro on, and let's do our best to cut this straight. We didn't destroy the threads, but that's a good sign. There is only so many threads in this thing, so not like we have a ton of choices here. And yes, I did put anti-seize on it yesterday. I probably could put another coating of it on it. Okay, grease joint goes up. I murdered the end of this. I've got some tools coming from Currie. Hopefully that will help fix it. And yeah, let's get this thing back in there. This is the original frame bracket that was in about that location. I happen to have some rectangular tube that's gonna fit that just oh so perfectly. So I'm thinking of modifying that and making it my own. I spent about an hour making this really nice bracket, and I think it needs to be 2.5 inches down, not like that, because this works perfectly as long as you don't go up. But if you go up, everything crashes into everything. So that's junk. Time to make a new one. It's preliminary work on version 2. All right, version 2. All right, so there's the track bar bracket. It's in a pretty good spot, I think. I'm a little concerned about its proximity to the shock tower, but if the shock tower is bending in that far, then we have other clearance issues. Here's down below. As you can see, the track bar should just be clearing all of our stuff. And hopefully that is victory. Before I get started, I wanted to re-verify that the axle is centered, and it is off by about 1/8 of an inch, but I'm not going to quibble 1/8. I may adjust it later, but I'm not going to quibble it now. All right, I got this shock upper in. I need to do a little bit of tub clearancing right there in order to get the bolt to slide in and out. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I need to get the bottom in, but that is kind of what it looks like. All right, I just got a good old hammer and a brass punch, and I cleaned up the edges on it. This one doesn't need to go far. Ta-da! All right, now we can get the shocks here. I know we'll give AccuTune credit because I asked them for these 90s, and they put one going one way and the other going the other way, which is perfect because depending on which vehicle you've got, you can set that up exactly the way you want it. It's going to eventually mount right there. Ta-da! Okay, now we need to jack up the vehicle enough to get the lower shock mount into place, which is almost as much as you need to get the spring in. But we're not going to put the spring in yet because we want to test our articulation. Let's keep working on this. All right, I've identified our first problem. The way that we have got these lower perches set up for the springs is canted at an angle that doesn't make this fit well. Which probably means I need to rotate this upwards, probably that 1/8 of an inch that I've got right there, in order to get better clearance, because these don't have as much ability to clock as I would have hoped or thought they did. I believe I've got the same problem over there. Maybe changing my minds about those bottoms. They may be bound up a little bit at articulation, but I don't think that they're going to be at ride height much of a problem. We are now at ride height, and we should have 6 inches of travel, which we do, which is perfect. That also is assuming max weight on the vehicle. My guess is it'll probably be on your normal driving, 7. So it won't be 50-50 on regular driving, just when we're doing Rubicon and camping and overlanding and everything else. But that's looking really good. All right, let's do a max stuff. Jack the jack up and get us all the way up. See what we crash into. There's our problem, maybe. We've got just a hair of clearance right there on the track bar. And we still got 3 inches maybe to go on the shocks. But that's what we're trying to avoid with the track bar, is trouble hitting things. So far, so good. Exhaust might conflict, and the exhaust is definitely touching right there, but we haven't really quite got this all tied up where it needs to be. It really should be over that way a little bit. We'll figure this out. This is about where the bump stops would be hitting, and I've got 3 inches of travel left. So that's not necessarily a good thing, but I think the only way to fix that would be to lower the shock, which would solve that body problem. That is definitely doable. Interesting. All right, the shock is extended approximately 12 inches, going almost all the way down. And you can see it's just starting to kiss. Well, it is kissing right there. So we may do a little bit of clearancing right there to get that to stop. But everything's looking pretty good over here. Let's take a look at the track bar. Track bar definitely makes a little bit of contact right there. I don't think it's a lot, but it will clear, but it'll probably make a bumping noise. But that's okay. I don't think we ever hit that spot either because I don't have the bump stop in there. So I'm feeling really good about this. All right, easy part of the welding is done, which is all the stuff up top. Now the hard stuff, which is all the underneath. All right, get the body jacked up just a little bit. We're going to attempt to weld that one last spot right there. Okay, bottom welded, top welded. This side looks like crap. You can't see it very well, but you get the picture. I did what I could do. I might clean all of this crap. I got ATF everywhere real quick. See if I can get some of that off. Cleaning things up as best as I can. I've been putting zip ties up there to clean that up, and I've got all the grease and junk off of here. Well, almost all of it. Just a spot. Because this was just covered in transmission fluid. think I'm gonna put the springs back in next. And then I think I'm gonna get this up on the lift because it's gonna make it a lot easier to grind these off and set them in the right spot. Trying to get the springs in. This is as low as this axle is gonna go anymore. It appears to be in bind with the track bar. So I think for right now I'm going to remove the track bar and see if it'll go down and make sure that that is indeed the problem. All right, let's see if we can find any lettering on this. I tried to get the letters up on the other one. Okay, so that is the top of the shock as far as I am concerned, or at least socially acceptable with the lettering in the right spot. How do you get this in here? Brute force. Find the lightest spot you can, and then give it a whirl. And she goes. Now, what I found was a pretty not painful way. Oh, there, I think I located it. I'll kind of lift it up and look, but I think we got it in there. And do that. And that should retain the lower spring. Oh, just inside. This crazy little exercise of picking and what's going on out there. Miraculously, it seems to be threading. I'm just wing it around a little bit until that puck lands on all the things that puck is supposed to land on. I need to include this Allen key in my emergency kit. That's feeling tight. Oh, now we just need to find the bolt and washer. Found it. I knew you hid it somewhere. Okay, changing my mind about this. I was originally thinking I'd get everything together, roll it onto the lift, bring it up on the lift, and do that without crawling around and all of that. But I think at this point it's going to be easier. What essentially I want to do is get that gap out of there and just give this a rotation. You see how this is more that and this is more that? It's in a bind. It's a pretty bad bind. I think if I bring that up an eighth, that'll bring this up a little bit. I think we'll be okay with all our geometry calculations. Obviously we'll test things, but let's get that off of there. It's going to be a little tricky because I didn't put things in good spots. Maybe I'll put the plasma cutter in gouge mode, or maybe I'll just mash it a couple times with a hammer. Get that side off. Now this side. Here's the trick about tack welds. If you're going to tack something, put them where you can get to them and not where you can't. Because what I'm going to have to do now is grab my carbide burr and dig my way in there. It's going to be a pain, but it'll be worth it. You'll see. That is about 1/8 of an inch higher. I use my angle finder. It's about 1 degree off, but it's really hard to hold that while it's wiggling and jiggling and flip my mask and get a weld tack in there. But I'm very much happy about the bind situation. It seems a lot better. So I'm going to weld that sumbitch in there and go with it. A few things to do here, but she's sitting on her own springs right now. We got Swaybar bolts, and you can see the travel is a little much by about 1 inch, and that'll probably get fixed when we put the gas tank in. Swaybar bolts, gas tank, let's get this thing started. All right, I had a little bit of neoprene tape, so I put some neoprene tape there, and I just zip tied those right there. I could weld up a whole elaborate bracket, but you know, quite honestly, I think that's going to be just fine. And a whole elaborate bracket is just weight. Zip ties are light and they come off quick. And that is a tire. Something tells me that this is going to be the battle. I'm guessing I'm going to be at this for a while. I haven't even tested to know if the fuel lines leak or not. So we're going to find out. All right, folks. It's time to gently persuade this fuel tank. It is sitting a little high right there. And we are not using that. Way too small. Fully restored. Ow. Alright, let's clean up all the smuts that's on this thing. It's still covered in transmission fluid. Let's see. Let's be hit right here. Yeah. All right, doing the smart thing and checking nuts and bolts. These used to be carriage bolts that were kind of wiggly and jiggly like this. And I have replaced them with nutserts. This nutsert was stripped out, the bolt was missing. So I drilled the nutsert out and replaced it. In Houston, we have a problem. This does not fit through that anymore. This gas tank has been cut down an inch, and that barely made it before. And it definitely doesn't make it now that the fuel tank skid's been tacoed a little bit. And I probably could massage the fuel tank skid a little bit. But I happen to have a nice long M8 bolt. And I think what I'm going to do is just cut those off and weld a little extra right on them. We're doing pretty good. I feel like I'm missing something. Why did I disconnect this? Why did I take my mask off? Why is the sky blue? I did set the welder correctly. I'll give myself points and kudos for not having burned through the material. But the battery's dead. Should have probably left it plugged into the trickle charger. So it's probably going to get charged overnight, and we're going to see how it does in the morning. But I'd like to cycle the fuel pump a few times to make sure I'm not spewing fuel all over the place before I spend all the time wiggling and jiggling all the bolts back into place. So probably more tomorrow. All right, couldn't help myself. We are right about 50 psi, maybe a touch less, and no leaks. So let that sit a little bit overnight. It'll bleed off a little bit. But that'll give me a decent test. By tomorrow, I'll make sure nothing is blown a line. But I think we're golden. The Jeep, that bolt, and there's another one right over there. All need to go in. A little bit of wiggle, a little bit of jiggle, and some nice long extensions, and she'll go right in. And we have a leaky fuel line. This whole thing's coming down, and we got to solve that problem. Pulled the leaking hose out. This is the one that I was pretty sure that I had screwed up, but you know, didn't do the best job on this one. This is the second one that I made, and I've got it clicked in here, and I'm gonna fix one of the bolts over there that fell. That bolt is there. That one fell in, so we've got to go fishing for it. It's in there somewhere. Just gotta find it. The top side of a fuel tank mount. You can see how this one is in. This is my spare frame. And I wish I had the fuel line. Now that I think about it, I might have to steal that off of the other Jeep. But there's realistically just a hole that you could theoretically use to drop a bolt into. It's just a hole that you could theoretically drop a new carriage bolt into. I think this one might work. We're going to go test it. Not a lot of space there. I managed to fish that new bolt through, and I did verify that it is the same head. And we would ideally find one of these little washer things that pins it into place. Oh, I'm going to wrestle through my hardware real quick. I'm not sure that we've solved the fuel line problem, though. Other things we can do, we need to get a hole drilled to retain this brake line. Slowly getting there. These Lyle tap sockets are fantastic, by the way. Makes this real easy. Need to get my wrench and finish tightening it up, but you get the idea. That's factory brake retention. And that's the hose that basically runs that little bad boy. Alright, I get gas tank partially jacked up, and I've got all the fuel lines connected right there. Cycle the key a couple times. Hear the fuel pump run. Turn that off. Let's see what we got for fuel pressure. 25. We can do a little better than that. That's enough to see if there's a leak. We'll take a good look at that here. I think I feel fuel running down this. Yep, definitely leaking. That is a fail. All right, good morning. We have an obstacle. We have a leaking fuel line. First thing we're going to do is get these things taken apart, because clearly they are not working. And that was easier than I thought it would be. And the next thing we're going to do is bodge together something with a caulk gun and a brake flaring tool. And we're going to try something I saw on Instagram. Because, you know, things we see on Instagram always work, don't they? Okay, we have our heat set to pretty low. We're going to get that a little warmer, not a lot, just a little bit. Better than the 60 degrees it is now. You probably could turn that up one more notch. I have it on the lowest setting. We don't want it to be 500. We want it ideally to be 385, at least according to other Instagram knowledge. Okay, once we've got that going, we're going to load that in this contraption. We are going to then try and shove that like that. Now I don't quite have the right caulk gun for this, but we're going to try to make it work. I think we should probably get this plastic thing out. I think we will get a better kick. Probably lost all the heat. We need this to be square, and it is not. It always looks so easy on Instagram. I need a better caulk gun. This is where I need another hand. I appear to be working. I'll be darned. This might go. Thought we could turn off the heat gun. Oh. Well, I don't know if that's going to be successful or not, but it's not rotating inside of itself anymore, so that's a good sign. Now, can we do it again without destroying the... that looks terrible, but I guess that's the price of admission. Alright, worked once. How bad can it be? I got the other side pressed on. Let's try cycling the key here. I think that's running. We'll give it a couple more cycles and then check fuel pressure on the rail. All right, 3 cycles. We're right about 48, 45, something like that. And I do believe we are leak free down here. It's a little hard to show you, but it is not weeping, it is not wet. There's that connection. Yeah, not weeping, not wet. I think we fixed it. All right, let's get this thing reinstalled. All right, we got a bunch of stuff we got to do. Also got to do that. A bunch of nuts and bolt checks. We got to get all this wiring and stuff up here all tucked out of the way, so none of it gets into the way. We got a good hour of just diddling around. A little wild and crazy here. We are in the process of having to rearrange or re-guide this particular spot of the fuel tank. And the nut is right there on the tip of my finger, or the bolt is right on the tip of my finger. But this needs to go over and down a little bit. So we have jack on block of wood to stick of wood to there. And I'm hoping if I use my leg and I jack that up, it will effectively move it, which it is doing. And hopefully it won't all come springing down on my face. We're going in a direction. I don't know if we're going in the right direction, but we are going in a direction. One more pump. Let's see if we can do it. Fortunately, I think we're going too up. Well, we might be making it. I think I can almost see the bolt. Let's give that another shot. Yeah, I think I see the bolt. Oh, this might work. Wrestling match continues. Okay, so using the jack and the block of wood against the tire over there, we got that bolt in and started. Now the problem is those 2 bolts are kicked that way too far. I can get a pry bar up there and pry the flange backwards to get the bolt almost engaged, but I also need to pry this way in order to get the bolts also to line up. So the Swaybar bolt is 7/16. It's got a nice big fender washer and a lock washer. I went through all my stuff. I didn't have anything. And then I thought about this stuff. This is a stash of nuts and bolts from an old hot rodder that I bought at a garage sale for 30 bucks. I ostensibly bought it for the bins because that was really all I cared about. But the stuff that he had in those bins has been solid gold, including an entire raft of 7/16 bolts, one of which is exactly the right size, and I even found a mangy old lock washer. Just my style. Now all I need is a fender washer. Well, 7/16 doesn't jam in there. So that leads me to believe that maybe this other one's metric? Alright, second choice is going to be 10 millimeter by 1.5. Good luck finding that. I do have stashes of nuts and bolts that I've stripped off of cars. Maybe. Looks a little small. We'll try it. Well, as Derek says, I'll be dipped. I had one right here. Who knew? Alright, sway bolt tightened. This was 11/16, which probably metric something. Whatever you do, do not put the stubby bit of the nut going that way, because it will eventually make contact with your control arms. Unfortunately, while this is 11/16, this side is 5/8. But, oh well. These nuts and bolts are a maintenance nightmare because all you can do is get a box wrench in there and a quarter turn at a time, and it just takes forever. Eventually I may need to bash this out or something like that, but cut an access hatch or something. Well, probably on this side, except there's, yeah, I might be able to get in there. One way or another, it sucks. Side tightened, and now let's reach underneath here, get the fuel nozzle back up and tightened up. Alright, just checking suspension now that we've got the gas tank installed. We're at about 7 3/4. I was hoping that would be closer to 6, but again, I'm not sitting in the Jeep and I don't necessarily have tools and other camping gear, so that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Remember, we got 12 inches total travel. Test ride went well enough that I felt like I'd wash a little bit, and I think I found a little victim here stuck in the grill. But I'm going to get the bugs washed off of this thing, and then I'm going to tackle the brake problem. I was looking around real quick. I didn't see a nick, but I think I nicked the brake line. I think I got 2 of them. There's another one right there. Holy smokes. Yep, another bird. 2 birds. 1 stone, 2 birds, 1 Jeep. Alright, a little bit washed. I'm going to let that drip for a little bit, and then I'm going to bring it inside. I think in the meantime, I might sweep up all the mess in here and put away some tools. The brake level is full, and it doesn't appear to be leaking, so that's weird. Suspension have not bottomed out. Okay, we're starting to get a little tire contact right there, but it's got just a little bit clearance. There's our But that's so tiny. And it's still on the ground. Contact with the track bar. Got lots of play left on the shocks. Nothing's coming out. Nothing's hitting anything. Yep, that is looking really, really good. And we're doing really good on shocks. Shock contact. Got lots of room there. Looking really good. Now we're anywhere from about 24 to 28 inches depending on which side of the race tire you go off of. That's the only contact it's making. No. Looking really good. Don't forget to pull the wrench off your brakes. Well, why don't you get on out of there? Yeah, that's about where she starts making contact with things. I think she's got more flex in her, but I do think that we need to clear her. Yeah. I think she's got more flex in her, but I do think we need to clear right here. Yep, I'm going to be pretty happy about that. I think we got something here. Nothing's crashing into each other, so I'm pretty happy with that. Chocolate milk. Oh yeah.